Ananya and Gaurav, first, congratulations for delivering a spooky horror show with Adhura. Although the show has received mixed responses, but most of them are positive. How has been the response and feedback that you are getting?
Vishal, I think, of course, there'll always be some people who will not like something, but the amount of love and messages that we are getting, we are very happy with it. Uh, what's important is that, of course, the horror and the thrill that's connected, but a lot of people are writing where the story has connected to them. You know, the themes of bullying, the themes of friendship, and those kind of elements. Now, I think that is very heartening to see. We've used the genre to showcase something of society, an issue of society, a terror of society via the genre. So when that connects, that is very heartening to see. Also, one more thing, what we wanted to do also was make sure, because we're talking about certain societal issues, make it a little more widespread so that more people like it, reach a larger audience. So when you reach a larger audience, some very nuanced, थोड़े intellectual को लगेगा यार ये थोड़ा on the nose कोई चीज है, but that is how you reach more people. You want to connect with more people. So I mean, we are very happy. I am very happy with the response. MA Prime Video for now is. Now we'll see how it progresses as it goes on.
I think people are liking it for the right reasons. We intended it to be a horror with heart, and people are liking it for the horror, but largely they're liking it for the heart. And the only way we're sort of gauging that is in the way that we're getting these responses, where people are saying that I find myself in the story and I relate to this part of the story, and that was always the intention, that we're trying to tell like a coming of age, emotional, tragic story about young people, and it's just set in a horror. So the fact that that emotional connect is happening is very exciting.
What was the inspiration for this show? I mean, what triggered this idea in your head when you started writing?
So the idea, the concept in itself was brought to us by this other writer called Anand Jain. He brought it to us, but at that point it was just like the seeds of an idea. And when we heard it, we thought we can absolutely develop a whole world out of it, because not only did it have that wonderful blend of that classic horror trope of a boarding school and the reunion of an old batch, it also had a lot of potential for layers of building characters and being able to talk about real life, like do like a social commentary through the horror. So we took that idea and then we developed into what it is today, where we said, okay, so it's one thing to be scared of a ghost and it's one thing to be scared of a spirit, but what is the real fear that people face in their everyday lives? The fear of, okay, will I be accepted, will I be rejected, about their identity, their sexuality, the mistakes they've made. And we said, what if we sort of layer the spirit and the ghost into that world? And I think we knew we had something there, because I'm a horror fan, so I too got excited. I'm a coming of age fan, I got excited. But when Gaurav got excited, Nikhil, Madhu, Monisha at MA, then even the Prime team, Aparna, Sahira, it just made us feel like there was something there.
And did you draw inspiration from any real life situations?
Yeah, Vishal, I went to a boarding school. I went to Mayo College. So the world of the boarding school, of course, was something that we created with experience of how things happen there, how the world is, the teachers, the dean, the bursar, the characters, the students, how they interact with each other, the reunion happening, all those elements, of course. About the horror, I don't know how much real life inspiration we took. The supernatural part of it, that no. But to add to what Ananya said, the reason for the story, like you said, episode 3, when you watch it, you get to know what happened in the flashback between those two boys. And that's such a strong moment. It's a moment where you feel like, and it's happened to all of us in our lives, right? We must have said something by mistake to a friend at some point, which you later regret. But maybe time has lapsed, so if you get a chance to say sorry, you want to say sorry.
It's a very cliched question, but have you ever experienced a paranormal event that you think came handy while you were working on the show?
I'm going to leave this question to
Yeah,
Ananya.
yeah.
On
I mean, so already with horror, there's like these codes and conventions. I keep saying it's like the Japanese manga world where there are already laws and rules of how things exist. A horror is the same. When you ask people what a ghost looks like to them, what are the powers of the ghost, they already know. It's like as if the rules are set of that world. And I mean, I myself have had like supernatural experiences. I mean, it sounds so far fetched, but I think we live in a country also, everyone has seen a ghost, and everyone at least knows someone who's seen a ghost. so so it's very, it's like you always say, "Arey, yeah, I've that person saw a ghost," or हम वहां जा रहे थे, तुमने पहाड़ में कुछ देख लिया. There's always a story that you've heard, and even I felt that. But I think the inspiration wasn't so much what I saw, but it was more what I felt. Where your entire logical cognitive mind stops working, and there's this kind of fear that sets in, that anxiety that sets in when you don't know what's happening in that moment, where it's beyond explanation and it's just you in the dark, and you sense something. So that feeling is so raw. In the writing and in the direction, we try to, of course, take inspiration from that feeling. जब वो एक एहसास है, how do you capture that ehsas, that
एहसास
what,
of डर,
huh?
एहसास of डर,
Because of,
डर, एहसास of डर, you saying?
yeah, well, in that moment when you are alone in your room and you just feel something, it's not about what you saw. In fact, it's the what you didn't see but you expected to see that creates the fear. You look around, you feel like your heart is racing. That's the stuff we took from real life, because we wanted to create that feeling and we wanted our actors to perform that feeling.
How much time it took you to cast Shrenik Arora, the little boy who plays the role of Vedant?
so Kavish Sinha, who did our casting, did a wonderful job at it. He went all across the country looking for kids because that was the most important character. Shrenik was part of the first lot of kids that we had liked, and we had liked him immediately. But we said, "Nahi, tum search karke aao. Let's see what else is there." But Shrenik, once we met him, once we interacted with him, was an easy choice because if you ever meet him, you will know that he's a very well-read, good, well-behaved kid. On set, shot देगा फिर अपना book पढ़ने जाएगा. Harry Potter पढ़ता है, read fantasy books. Very well-behaved, calm, not jumping. He's like that kind of person which helps in the character also, in what the character is. In terms of others, Ishfaq, Rasika, I think Rasika was in Ananya's mind while she was writing it also, and Ishfaq was doing Rocket Boys with MA at that point. So the main cast just happened on its own, and we knew we wanted good actors because यहाँ पे the genre is the hero, right? I mean, on the poster, the face will be of the small kid, which is an easy face. It won't be of the star, so to say. So you knew you wanted actors who will perform and be able to get that fear out and get the message across.
So then, how challenging was it to direct children?
It is challenging because there are certain parameters that you only realize once you start working with them. First of all, they have a very limited attention span. There's that. They get distracted very easily, so you have to keep finding very interesting ways to keep engaging them into what you're seeing. Then secondly, there was a big responsibility, given the subject that we were shooting. We had to make sure that they were aware that the scenes that they were in were being enacted, that we're not promoting any of it, that in our acting workshops, we had very many workshops, uh, not only with both of us. We also did workshops with an acting coach, Bharat, who specifically works with children. And in those workshops, besides the lines and the staging of the scenes, we also worked on whether they understood that bullying is not right, whether they felt safe. We came up with signs in which they would let us know on set if they felt unsafe, if they wanted to cut. So there was that responsibility. The other thing as a director was, giving direction to an adult is very easy. You can talk like an adult. You can, sort of just say, why don't you tap into your own history and, bring that emotion out. But children, they don't understand these nuances. So you have to be very specific in your instruction. It's literally saying, open this book to page so and so and read this line. You have to be that clear.
Or give
Uh,
that expression? Or
Sorry?
give, or give that expression?
Exactly. So you had to be very clear that, when, and you had to find examples that they know. So with Shrenik specifically, he was such a Harry Potter fan. So it was easy for me to say, in Harry Potter, when this happens, how he feels. When you fail your exam, how you feel. So not only did I have to give clear instructions, that meant that I also had to have a lot of clarity in my own head when I was giving those instructions. So that was the challenge in a way. But the bonus was that we got some very sharp children who took instructions also very well, especially Shrenik, who plays Vedant.
There are scenes in the show with long silences filled with BGM. So, what were the limitations or challenges the series of this genre throws at its makers? Because a lot of tension is built in the post production, if I'm not right.
The excitement of this genre for me to a large extent was to learn about it also. I mean, there's a challenge in it. How do you do this? The silences, the sound design, everything is a major contributor to what you do, right? We wanted to get one of the best sound teams around. John Stewart, who's done our music, he's done Sher Shah and Mirzapur, etc. Jojo, the sound designer, has done Shahid Uddam Singh. Justin's a national award winner, who's the mixing engineer. Above all that, it was also written in. Like Ananya, when she writes it, because when you're reading horror also, you need to be able to feel it. तो वहां पे वो लिखा हुआ है moment, this kind of music plays, ये reference tracks है उसमें, the sound of so and so, there's a construction site sound that you keep hearing in the background. That's a character, but that's like something that's seeded in. So it was challenging, but also very fulfilling because I think the fun of it is in all these kind of creations and challenges and to get it out. And once you feel the eeriness, you're like, ha, kuch to kiya.
To me, in parts of the show reminded me of Ahat, the famous show that used to come on Sony TV. That was a horror show. We all watched it, I'm sure, while growing up.
Yes.
Are you a fan of horror movies, and which films you revisited or watched while researching for this show?
I am a huge horror fan. I've watched horror films my whole life, and honestly, this is in part a passion project because it was my hope to delve into this genre, and also to do it in a way where it's not just about the jump scares, but it's also about the emotional aspect of like human nature. So in that way, I don't think we particularly revisited any. I didn't particularly revisit any film as such, but in my head I had this whole bank of all the films that I've watched, and in that the films that have always stood out for me were the ones that had that little psychological aspect, which shows the deterioration of a human character. And that way, like The Shining for me is a really good example, because it's so inspiring in the way that they've taken a liminal space where there's nobody and there's this man slowly losing his mind, and you don't know whether it's psychological, whether it's supernatural. And so with Adhura, even the boarding school is that kind of a liminal space, and you have this young boy and you don't know exactly what's happening, and the story unravels. But I think that kind of understated, it's not jump scary, it's just what you're scared is that it's ambient. The horror is all around, it's not one particular moment. And also you're seeing someone that you are rooting for, but then you also start getting scared of them. That duality is great. I think The Shining would be the closest that I would say would be inspiring for me with respect to Adhura.
Gaurav?
Uh, in the sense that I don't think we revisited movies as such, but we spoke about different movies and we understood the elements from it. I mean, of course, Ram Verma's Bhoot is one of the favorite horror movies that I have seen, especially made here in the recent past. And there's a sense of fear building in a real environment. मतलब we didn't want to be in one भूत बंगले में या कहीं पे धूल. एक स्कूल है, कैंपस है, डे टाइम में भी हो सकता है. So those elements are what we wanted to to have, right? There's an English film called Get Out,
Yes.
uh, made by Jordan Peele, and what it does is it talks about racism in the genre of horror. It's not full of jump scares, but it's taking an issue of society, like a horror of society, and putting it into the genre and then mixing it. That, I mean, to me, is what we've tried to do also, and I mean, that was wonderful thing.
You know, the flip side of making a good horror thriller is that it makes you very uncomfortable. Was that your intention to make a series that people might only be able to watch it once? Like itna darao ke they don't want to watch it again. Was that the intention?
No, of course not. Some of the great horrors actually have a timelessness to them. So that's why I was saying that, when you make a horror that is completely built on jump scares, you can never watch it again. Like when you say a Conjuring, for example, which is like a very studio horror, it's all about being in a theater and getting spooked.
Yes.
Whereas when you look at, like Gaurav said, a Get Out, you look at a Hereditary, look at The Shining, they have a very classical kind of repeat timelessness. And the only reason is because they are based on they make you feel uncomfortable, but sometimes it's good to be uncomfortable because it also makes you ask questions. So not only is the horror spooky eerie atmosphere making, we hope that make the audience feel uncomfortable, but also the ideas of bullying and homophobia should make you uncomfortable, to the point where you address that these are realities in your society. You should be uncomfortable about that happening actually in your real world. So and we layered it in a way that we hope that every time someone watches, they'll find something new in it, something that they didn't think before. Like there's a metaphor in there in the show about the shadow boy, which is the graphic novel that Ninad draws.
Yes.
To me, the shadow boy was always a representation of somebody in the closet, what it feels like to live in the shadow, and what happens when you finally get the courage to step out. So we've left these little, you know
Mm.
uh, little things for people to discover. And I hope that they keep watching it, because it's also, a love story, it's a story about friendship, and those things are universal. You can keep watching it with that in mind.
So then finally, is there a part two also planned? And what was your big takeaway or the big learning from Adhura?
I think my big takeaway from Adhura is collaboration is very important all through, and that makes for a good viewing for the audience. My takeaway after the release and seeing people talk and the kind of reactions and the kind of we've got like nice long notes on Instagram and posts, and they're putting that.
As filmmakers, sometimes we take ourselves so seriously that we think we're smarter than other people. And I think that's a big deterrent when you're trying to tell a story that should reach a vast audience. You shouldn't talk down to them, you should talk with them. So sometimes the tools and the languages you use, it's okay to make them palatable. So when you're picking a subject like homophobia or bullying, if you make it perverse and you make it so dark and very nuanced and intellectual, then what happens is that it puts people off, because there's a sense of, I don't want to watch this, it's too much. But if you concentrate more on the feelings that it creates in the characters, if you go with the emotion, and you pay more focus to how a person is feeling versus what is very stimulating and what can be exciting, कि kiss दिखा दिया, लड़ाई दिखा दी, बहुत intellectually किसी चीज को दिखा दिया, where people are also not connecting. So I think the whole point is that if you don't make a connection, there is no point in talking about important things, because it'll just fall through.
Thank you so much for your time. All the best and looking forward to lot soon.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Vishal.
Vishal.